Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Evidence, the podcast where we dive deep into true crime cases, uncovering the facts and exploring the unanswered questions that keep us coming back for more. I'm your host, Marv, and I want to thank you for joining me today. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can find links to my PayPal and Cash App in the description. Now, let's get into today's topic.
Breaking all the patterns, facts and theories, clues and controversy. Join the journey, uncovering the mystery. This is Beyond the Evidence, where justice prevails, with Marv leading the way. Truth never fails. Now get ready for this live stream. Super chat, highlight your message. Don't fall victim to the irrelevance. Hit that like, share, subscribe to Marv's Beyond the Evidence.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Evidence. Let's bring Bossy in.
Hi, Marv.
Hey, so before everybody asks, yes, I got sunburned again today. I look like a red lobster. So, but I had fun.
That's what's important.
Yeah, I went to Andrea Dell's car show. She helps support the DVA every year. And got to see some really beautiful cars and spend time with great people. And then went and saw Helen, one of my viewers, and she's been watching the Flint case and us reporting on this, Bossy, and got to go and spend some time with her today. So it was a good day.
That's good. I'm sure you need a little rest and relaxation also.
Yes. Tonight, what we want to do is finish up on the testimony that happened Wednesday. And there's only one witness. It's Detective Rude, who made a big difference in this case. Okay. After that, we're going to do what I call a final wrap-up. And we're going to dispel some of the rumors and untruths that are happening in the comments regarding this case and this trial. So I wasn't
haven't even read over any of those, so maybe I should do that.
Oh, don't worry. I'm sure you can jump in with what I'm going to talk about, and you'll have plenty to say.
Excellent.
So Bossy took all the notes from Detective Rude since I went to court late that day. So she's going to give us all the information. Before we start that, True Crime Talk with Frank Meister popped in. Jill Mosier's here. Hello. Boston Christian is in the chat. Maria is in the chat. Andrea's here. And the Purple Hearts for Karena have already started, so that's a good thing. All right. So what do you got for us, Bossy, from Detective Rude's testimony?
Okay, I forgot this is another day where I'm up. Okay. We started court at about 8:50 that morning.
Oh, that was good. You guys actually did good.
Not too bad.
Compared to
Detective
other mornings.
Bruce Rude, and his last name is spelled Rood.
Oh, I'm glad I know that.
He's the captain currently over the criminal investigative unit. In 2020, he was a detective of the division in 2023. Oh my gosh, my writing is awful. I'm sorry, give me just 2 seconds.
Yep, go ahead.
I have dogs that are worse than toddlers. Okay. Okay, so I'm not okay. He was a detective in the division from 2023 till circa 2022.
Okay.
He was more involved in the Flint Farmer and Karena McClerkin case in late 2021.
Okay.
He was assigned to Kokomo Fire Department. He was code enforcement.
He was code enforcement for the fire department?
I believe so.
Okay.
And you know what it's like when they're giving all their background and everything. They can fly through it because it's their history. So and so I apologize if I got any of this wrong.
That's okay.
In 2020, he became the chief of the crime analysis unit. I believe he talked about contacting a Martinez from Cincinnati. He was the analysis crime data. And also, he spoke of Amanda Sin. She was the crime stats and intel in criminal cases. They took on 2 cold cases. The second one was somewhat of a conspiracy case, he said. Early of August 2021, there was a lady out front with a sign about Karena. They talked for about 45 minutes, and they spoke about her grievances with Kokomo Police Department and her missing granddaughter. This was Jerry McClerkin. She wasn't aware that he was part of Kokomo Police Department. And he found out that it was Jerry, you know, her grandmother.
Yep.
So he asked his bosses if he could take on the case. He said that there were so many scenarios. He mentioned Gabe Ellis. He mentioned that a girl OD'd in Gabe Ellis's geo tracker outside of his house, which turned out to be false. There was a girl, but it was not Karena. So these are leads that he's looking into that he thought were Karena.
Okay, so that's good to know because I got questions in the comments underneath the videos about Gabe Ellis, and I did
Sure.
respond that those were false leads,
Correct. These were
false
false
information.
false tips that were called in that they still had to vet and follow up on because they were supposed sightings of Karena or
Okay.
her known whereabouts. Okay. There was a Tampa sighting. He said there was a video that looked like her, and even the investigators thought that it looked like Karena. But she was cleared as that. He said there was a detective who came to Kokomo. He was 100% sure this was Karena. So sure he even talked to the family, but it turned out that it wasn't. There was a picture from Texas that looked very similar to Karena. There was a theory that she OD'd at a hotel in Kokomo and that she was lowered from the second floor into the bottom floor they said that her body was lowered from the second floor down to the ground level. That this was Billy Heiser's room that she overdosed in. But Billy Heiser actually stayed in the first floor of this room.
Oh, okay.
Also, Karena McClerkin was never seen on this hotel room videotape. And I believe this is outside of the trial, but there is a news article on this if you feel like looking into that further on your own.
Right, but just realize that even though there's a news
false.
article about it, it was false.
Correct.
Right.
And then they went to the location she was supposedly buried out back of this hotel room. And then they found out she lied. I believe this is the girl that called in that tip. I believe she was an inmate. They did not go into a lot of detail on that either, but there is, again, news articles that reference these things as well.
Yeah.
And then they mentioned Michael Phillips.
Oh, yes.
He said that Michael Phillips supposedly saw Karena McClerkin. He said he has mental health issues, that he lies. So then he talked about all of these false leads, all of these tips called in. All of them fell through, but one of them. He said, as an investigator, you have to turn over every leaf, every rock, every stone.
Yeah.
There were reports that she was dumped in water. There were reports that she was buried at an old house of Flint, where Flint Farmer had lived with an old couple. That she was in pig lagoons, wells. He said these are leads, but all tips also. Something that has to be vetted. He talked about inmates at jail, including Farmer. And I believe this is where he started questioning, because he said inmates at the jail, including Farmer. He said, yes, 3 to 4. He said, what leads did Flint Farmer give? He said, never here. He said that Farmer said that she was never here. He also said that she came there down an alley, but he turned her away. He also later, when confronted with the village pantry video, he then said he remembered, but she left with someone in a white truck.
Right.
He said, Flint Farmer's story always changes. He says he tried to control the narrative. And then there was an objective. And then I believe he said he will ask a question. He asked if he reviewed the calls of when Flint Farmer was in jail.
Mm-hmm.
He spoke about a gap between 2016 and 2021, and to determine why there was a gap. He
So
said
there was a gap in the calls?
I think there was a gap. I am not sure. If I recall, I think it was a gap in the investigation. But don't quote me.
Okay.
I said I'm terrible note taker. I do my best. This might clear it up a little bit further. So, he said the gap in 2016 to 2021 determined why there was a gap. He said, "Do you know if all was investigated?" He said, "Yes, I investigated all leads." So that's what they were referring to, was the gap in leads between 2016 and 2021, I believe. Like how there was a lot at first, but then there wasn't so many. And then in 2021, I think they may have started getting more.
Well, and I know that the investigators originally on the case were not looking into things like they should have been. So that could have been part of the gap also.
He said, I investigated all leads. And he said he started reviewing them in 2021, which is, I believe, when he started looking into all the past leads and took on the case. Yes. He said he said he spent 20 years, I believe he said in 1999, as an undercover narcotics detective. They spoke about Dottie Cochran was an informant. He said in August of 2021, he saw her and he conducted an interview with her. He said some things she said were positive. Other officers did not think that it was positive. Positive means like a new lead that could
Good information.
Yes.
Okay.
He said, did it produce more information? And he said it solidified others' theories. And then it amped up the investigation in 2022. He became more involved.
Okay.
He said Karena McClerkin's family were demanding that the state police take over. That podcasters were demanding that it got looked into. He said it basically created a perfect storm. He said May of that year, he started networking cases. He was talking about he has a lot of contacts throughout the Midwest. And, as that's, when you're networking, he has a large circle for that. He said from contacts, he requested a state trooper be involved. So he contacted someone that he knew that he had networked with and said, look, can we get a state trooper involved on this case? He said his colleague, Andy Renberger, is a state trooper. Okay, so this is where he's talking about a colleague said something about Andy Renberger is a state trooper, and he said, and some old guy. And he said when they talk about and some old guy, that they are referring to him, unfortunately.
Oh, no. Okay.
He said they worked the case together. There is an objection. He said, ask a direct question. So he said in 2022, they created a ruse. Objection. He said that he can tie all of this together. He said, isn't it true you created a ruse to set Flint Farmer in the best scenario to be investigated? And he said, why? He said there was lots of surveillance. Objection. He said he's trying to change he's trying to change the client's trust or testimony. He's trying to get into his head. They're talking about arguing facts and they can't speculate, and then that was to be abolished. So I'll kind of go through all that so that way everyone kind of understands. That's why it gets confusing at some point, because you hear parts and you just write down the parts that you hear because they say objection and they go up there and they talk. They come back, they say 2 or 3 words and they go back up and they have another sidebar.
Yep.
So that's what that.
And they never finish the question because the judge sustains the objection.
Correct.
Okay,
so they said, so you observed Mr. Farmer through concealed means. He said he had a GPS on his car, found he had a normal life. Did you want to disrupt his normal life? Objection. Oh my gosh. He said, yes. They want, and I guess it was overruled. He said, yes, he wanted to put pressure on him.
Yep.
He wanted to get him talking and wanting to get him out of his comfort zone.
Okay. Before you go, let me just say that is a common tactic for law enforcement to use.
Sure.
They don't just use it against Flint Farmer, they use it against a bunch of people. So go ahead.
No problem. He said in August of 2022, he met with Jerry and James, which is Karina's father. He said, told her to be patient, told them to be patient. And James said, at what point will they stop worrying about an arrest and just find my daughter? Those words are hard to hear.
Yep.
He said he met with Marlena, and he said he thought she was going to throw out, and then they objected. He said, Marlena, how often her and Karena McClerkin spoke, and why is that important? He said around the time Hawk, it's HAWK, Hawk Analytics first was their original focus, and it comes out of Tucson, Arizona. And it's like a tool that they use for missing kids. And it's to look at their phones. And they had spoke of how Karena and Marlena spoke every day. They looked at Karena McClerkin's phone, her GPS location. So it would show if she left in a white truck. Yes. It should not. It showed, yes, it showed she did not. That is factual.
So they proved through her records and her location that she did not leave that area.
Correct. She did not leave from the village pantry area in a white truck.
Okay.
He said, you found them a reliable source to use. He said, yes, reliable and free. And that kind of created a little bit of a chuckle. Said it provided the records, and it came back a list of Karena McClerkin's calls and location.
Okay.
It showed her and Flint Farmer were together. Then there was an objection. And then I wrote down prelim. And then I wrote down certain records you were referencing were some records from a different company. Objection again. He said there was ample evidence they were together. I can't read this word, but it says a witness saying in a report. And then it says something about a prison by Terre Haute. It was a false lead by Kylie. And then he mentions April Bittner and Jeffrey Moore as colluded, maybe. Info on missing person. He said, how determined to move forward. Okay, so basically he's talking about how he went back through all these other reports of Karena being last seen with Flint Farmer in his apartment, and he found those to be credible enough to investigate that further.
Okay.
He said he brought it to the prosecutor's office, talked to them about where Kokomo Police Department stalled. He talked about how there was a grand jury called. Yes, and then there was a sidebar. Okay, Captain Rude. A warrant was sought by Renbarger to intercept calls. Did you testify at the grand jury? Yes. Were you and KPD listening to calls? He said we had a few calls and recorded with Kylan. He said that Kylan was part of the ruse. He told her exactly what to say. He said, do you remember hearing Flint Farmer's concern for her and her family? Were any law enforcement intimidating her or threats of taking her kids? No, she was very cooperative. The grand jury proceeding, was there a warrant issue? Yes, during the same time, and he participated. Talking about Officer Rude participated.
Right.
At Flint Farmer's house on South Courthouse Street, he was with other officers, and the Wheelers and Flint Farmer was present. He's testifying that there was paraphernalia, and both Wheelers were arrested, but Brad Wheeler wanted to talk to the investigators.
Okay, let me just put,
Sure.
before you go into this part, it's really important that people know that they moved from the South Washington Street to another house when this happened. So they weren't arrested at the South Washington house. And
Correct.
I have this on video. I have a video of the second house that they were actually arrested at. And I'll show you all that when I get home, but go ahead.
Correct. And all three of them then shared this apartment together, correct, Marv?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
And all three of them were arrested at that new apartment.
Correct, for drug charges and paraphernalia. I'm just finding my place real quick. He said both Wheelers were arrested, but Brad Wheeler wanted to talk to the investigators. Brad Wheeler wanted to show where Karena McClerkin was, because at this point they hadn't found her yet. He said there was talk about immunity. Alicia, whatever her name is. Alicia Wheeler, the same day, was walking on Markland, and they picked her up and interviewed her. So when she bailed out of jail for the drug arrest, she was walking on Markland, and they picked her up for an interview.
Okay.
She had been arrested at Farmer's and taken to jail when the warrant was served.
Okay.
Mr. Wheeler was giving info. He saw okay, I'm sorry. He says Mr. Wheeler was giving info. He saw Brad Wheeler taking Benzinger to the scene. He said he went also and spent the entire day. So he's talking about Brad Wheeler. Then they granted him immunity and they were taking him out to the scene. He said that he spent the entire day there and the next day there. And this is Officer Rude. He said he documented, it was also documented taken by another officer, the scene report.
Yeah, so he's just verifying that the video that we saw of the other officer taking Brad Wheeler to the location was correct, and that he had seen him take him there. So, okay.
Correct. He said it was yes, the scene tech was there. He had a diagram of the scene. He said when they first arrived, they were observing the area. They went through all the woods and spray painted where Brad Wheeler said he believed he buried her. He talked about they just did that with orange circles of spray paint. He said to about 20 feet from the edge of the pavement. It was about 20 feet from the edge of the pavement to the woods. He said there's yellow crime scene tape. He said that it was guarded by an Indiana State Police officer all night long. So when he left the
time
scene,
they got out there and did the spray painting and stuff, it was getting too dark to actually start looking for. Okay.
Correct. So that scene was guarded by the ISP officer all night until they came back the next day.
Okay.
He said about 40 feet over, Brad Wheeler was in the general area, but not the exact spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then they show this picture of a butterfly, and it was where she was located. And then the defense said something. And he said they had been in investigations. They had taken some soil samples with a probe. And they had another sidebar. And then there was no objection. They entered States Exhibit number 43, which was a pic of the butterfly,
Mm-hmm.
and States Exhibit 42, which was her grave location, where they looked for, he's talking about where they looked for impressions. And he said that before they started their search, that they cleared every single bit of ground vegetation there was. It
Right.
was
So
bare,
they
down to the dirt.
took it right down to the dirt.
Correct. And
Mhm.
then that's when they began looking for the impressions in the dirt of where to look for her. He said then they probed the soil several feet deep, and I think my pen ran out of ink right here again.
Right, and I
got
remember this part. There was several locations that they probed,
correct.
looking to see if the topsoil and the clay had been mixed, and that there was clay at the top mixed in with the topsoil.
And this is also where he told the story that they had taken several soil samples, and then this butterfly had been flying around them in the States, and then that's when they're objecting and back and forth. And he said,
Right.
and then they hadn't found her yet, and then this butterfly landed on this indented spot, and they did a soil sample. And when they brought the probe out, there was a tiny piece of plastic on the end of the probe, and the soil had been disturbed, and that's actually where they had found Karina's remains at.
Yeah.
So this is when you're here now, right?
No, I didn't hear any of his testimony.
Okay. Actually, at 10:37, it says we're go back on the record, and Detective Rude was excused.
Oh, okay.
And the state rests.
Okay, and then yes, that's when I got there.
Okay.
So
Do you want to?
the big part of that testimony for him is how he met Jerry, talked to her for 45 minutes, and was interested enough in her granddaughter's missing case, and got permission to look at the case and looked through all of what they had and checked out every tip and lead that they got. And many, many, many of those were false. For those of you who know this case, Adventures with Purpose is a group that goes out, and they have boats and sonar and everything, and they look for vehicles in the water or anything that could hold a body in it. And they actually did come to Kokomo and search for Karena and didn't find anything. So that's part of why he's saying this is also a national case, is because all of that happened along with these tips in these other states. But the thing that they kept coming back to, and the only thing that made sense after they found the videotapes, is that she was with Flint Farmer. Now, if you'll see in my video that I have, when you walk from the village pantry to the apartment that Flint Farmer had, it's only 6 houses away. Only 6 houses away. So when they say they were in that area together, they could see that it was between the house and village pantry, and they were together. And it just so happens that they got lucky, in my opinion, that the day they went to serve the warrant on him, they found the drugs in the house. And and got to arrest the Weavers or the Wheelers. If they hadn't done that, we would have never found her. So because Brad made the deal with the prosecutor to get immunity for him and his wife, they were able to find Karena. And the butterfly story melts my heart because our family believes that butterflies are a reflection of our loved ones that have passed. So that hits home with me right in the heart. After that, what happened is, and we went over this, the defense asked for all the charges to be dismissed. And the judge said, absolutely not. Then there was arguing between the lawyers about something that they did or did not want in the jury instructions. And they started arguing in front of us, but then we were sent to lunch for over 2 hours. We came back and we sat outside the courtroom for at least another hour, if not more. And we did get information that the defense was going to rest. The defense put on one witness, and it was that detective that had been called by the prosecution. And the only thing, and he was the one that took care of the cell phone records, getting the cell phone records and looking through them.
I believe that was Detective Scott Wolf.
Was his last name Wolf? Because Wolf was the pathologist.
Okay, maybe not. I have his first name as, well, I have Detective Scott. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's his first or last name.
That might have been his last name.
Okay.
And the only thing the defense had him do was explain UTC time. And he said, UTC time is world time. Okay? All the other time zones have to calculate from that time what time it would be in their time zone, plus or minus 4 to 5 hours. And the defense asked him, okay, in Kokomo, Indiana, what was it? And he said it was a 4-hour difference. And then he asked him to explain military time because the phone records showed military time. So he told the jury how to determine that 1 p.m. was noted as 1300 and so on. And that was all they asked him. And the prosecution didn't even ask him any questions. They just said no questions. So that's how it ended. And then we were sent to lunch early, came back, waited over another hour.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that surprised me that was their only witness that they called.
Me too, because according to what they said, they were going to recall this detective. They were going to recall Marlena Smith, who was Karena's mother. They were going to call Flint's brother, daughter, and son. They were going to recall...
I thought Alicia Wheeler was one that was back for recall.
Yeah, Alicia, and then I believe it was the anthropologist that they had on there, along with some other ones.
Yes.
And they didn't call any of those. They did, before we went to lunch, they did have a thing about they wanted to call Dr. Wolf back, who was the pathologist. and the prosecution told him, you must re-subpoena him and pay for his expenses. And he said, then he will come in and testify again. But if you are not willing to do that, and you're not going to subpoena him and pay for his expenses, he's not coming back.
And he didn't come back.
And he didn't come back. I don't know if the defense thought that they had a strong enough case that they did enough and just didn't need those other witnesses. I'm not sure.
Creating reasonable doubt, even on social media, has a huge impact on a case in this day and age. And we are learning that more and more. And I hope that the court systems catch up to those that are really interfering in investigations and causing them to have the outcomes that we've been seeing lately in our community.
Right. And as you know, then closing statements happened. And I'm going to tell you guys this right now. I did not get a lot of notes on closing statements because the prosecutor and the defense attorney talked so fast it wasn't even funny. I can tell you that, let me see here. Okay, I can tell you that the prosecutor thanked the jury on behalf of law enforcement, the community, pretty much everybody. Said that Flint was charged with murder because there were some basic elements, that he knowingly and intentionally, around October 11th, 2016, killed Karena. He said that he allegedly, knowingly and intently, under sudden heat. He said something impacted his mental health. There's now 2 charges. He said he walked through the shadows. He said, it's your voice, your verdict. Speak for Karena. She was 18 years old. She was not perfect, but she was trying, and she was loved. He said, this is about what a man did to a young girl. What he did, he said, and tried to erase. He said he tried to do that with evidence, facts, or he said, listen to the evidence and the facts and use your common sense to put this together. Not the noise about the person after me, speaking about the defense attorney. Said that on October 11th, Karena was at her grandmother's. Then talked about April Downs at the Wheelers. Karena's dropped off at the Wheelers, leaves with Flint. There's a phone call at 10:32, or she made phone calls. The video shows that they left the village pantry at 10:32, and at 11:22 was when Karena's phone went silent. There was no calls, no texts were answered or sent by her or answered. He said, look at April. April testified that there was a guttural, primal, whimpering noise. Now, he said April used weed a lot, but she was the only one that was sober. She was concerned enough to elbow her boyfriend and have him have Brad check. Said that the boyfriend had also heard the thumping, asked Brad to check. He said he saw two silhouettes and believed they were crushing pills. Said that on 10/11/2016, they can see her on the video getting snacks and drinks. She was alive. On October 12th, Alicia Wheeler sees Karina's body when Flint Farmer brought her over. They put her in the shed. They moved her to a truck and took her to Miami County, where they buried her 4 feet in a secret grave. Talks about July 18th and 19th, 2022, and the grand jury and the Wheelers falsely testifying, lying that they absolutely lied in front of the grand jury and continued to lie until they got immunity. They were told to tell the truth and come clean. They gave their statement and took officers to the burial site, where they found Karina wrapped in plastic. Their statements, since they agreed to the immunity, have been accurate and truthful. April said that Karina was calm, sober, and cheerful. Seemed that her demeanor had changed and become altered. She said that Karina was not out of control. She was not in a zany stoop. She had her faculties, and there was no sign of an overdose that she saw from Karina. That she heard the guttural primal noises and was told it was the crushing of pills. She didn't buy it. She feared and spoke up. Jeff, her boyfriend, let us know that Karina asked to stay with Flint Farmer, who was impaired and in a zany stoop. Said that Flint Farmer was supposed to have the safe with cash and drugs in it. That night, a $7,000 withdrawal was made. Illegal drugs, cash, and safe were important to Flint Farmer. Talked about on 10/12/2016, he made the statement, "Bitch got into my shit," and that was his motive for killing her. Flint Farmer was impaired but calm. Flint and Karina leave. They go to his apartment, and Flint tells everybody that Karina was never in the apartment. She came over, but he didn't let her in. After evidence was shown to him, his story changes. He said that Flint Farmer states that he was trying to help her, but makes arrangements for her to be put in a shallow grave. They take a dead Karina he takes a dead Karina to the neighbors, states this little bitch is dead. And has her flung over his shoulders and hauled out like trash. They wrap her in bags, refuse to call the cops. Alicia says that she never saw that condition and that look. She is his friend and he's a mentor. And he says, is this how they treat someone? No, it's a murder. He says Alicia Wheeler helps in fear. He said Flint orders Brad to move the body and says, I'll take care of you. The prosecutor specifically said this, and I want people to listen to this because there are a lot of misstatements in the comments and any of the posts about the trial. Flint didn't help bury her, but gave directions, acting like a murderer trying to get rid of evidence. Brad Wheeler buried her in a shallow grave with no ceremony and no marker. Flint Farmer did not know that she was buried because Brad said he didn't tell anyone, especially Flint. Flint lied and tried to bury the truth literally and figuratively. He said Kylie exposed the truth about Flint, stating that Flint admitted something chilling, said that Karena was in the safe, fell asleep. He fell asleep and woke up, that Kylie knew he was lying, said that if it was anyone, he would have flipped out and beat the crap out of them. So if it was anyone else that had gotten into his safe, he would have flipped out and beat the crap out of them. Flint had control over his neighbors. Kylie said Karena knew where he lived, and he knew Karena and gave her money previously. That the daughter was afraid and wanted the truth to come out more. And the truth can confirm the verdict. Said the cell phone verified that they were together, and that Karena's phone stopped responding at 11:32. Once again, reiterated that Flint found Karena in the safe. She was wrapped in bags and he told them to dispose of the body. Flint controls the narrative, telling people, don't talk to them. I don't know anything. You don't know anything. He was paranoid about the grand jury and others talking and giving evidence into Karena's disappearance. There's consistent exclusiveness with witness tampering. And this is consistent with someone who would commit murder. Innocent men don't joke about this. They don't. Oh, that he had an intimate relation with Kylie, or with Karena. So he said he had an intimate relationship with Karena, and that it was inappropriate. A 50-year-old man and a 17-year-old girl doing drug use leads to trouble. And Kylie Ann had demons, and evidence that supports Flint murdered Karena. Innocent men don't talk or act the way he does. They've seen accused witnesses and suspects, and they don't react with false manipulation and false something. Then he talked about the butterfly and the quiet sign of peace, and besides the butterfly landing on the exact spot that she was located, she was wrapped in plastic and silenced. And he said the truth was finally revealed. She was a beautiful woman with dreams, with demons, showing burial site, buried in grave in trash bags. Rude digging in, she probably wouldn't have been found. Said the defense is going to tell you this was an overdose. What defendant did? How about accountability? Said that her life mattered. You have evidence and testimony and the truth. Give her a verdict and a voice, and find Flint guilty of murder. The defense came on. They thanked the jurors also. They were talking about the process and how it works. Mr. McCann's first word, defense and prosecution, is like three brothers. Oh, he has three brothers, and he always likes the last word. Said that McCann is not correct, but he doesn't get a second chance to come back up and talk to them. So he has to say everything he needs now. He said, you've heard a lot of evidence, or you've heard about a lot of emotional saying accountability, asking for accountability and justice. Not what you have, not what you're here for. Death doesn't mean murder. They're trying to give you images to tug at your heartstrings so that you can convict someone. He said the butterfly on the grave, you can't base this on an emotion. You have to base it on law and facts. Follow the law. Presume he is innocent and hold the prosecutor to the burden of law. Said the definition of reasonable doubt, guilty of charges, prove beyond all doubt. And now this, I didn't like that he said the prove beyond all doubt, because every case has some doubt, and it's supposed to be prove beyond
a reasonable doubt.
a reasonable doubt, right? He said the evidence, there's a lack of evidence.
Which, I don't mean to interrupt you, but beyond a reasonable doubt doesn't mean that there isn't doubt. It just means that there's no one else who could have done this. Am I right, Marv, or am I misinterpreting that also?
Say that again?
Okay, so beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean that there could be some doubt. It just
Right.
means that there's beyond a reasonable doubt that anyone else could have committed this crime. Is that correct?
Right.
Just making sure I'm clear on that.
Yep. Evidence excludes every reasonable theory. I told you that there was bad decisions after this tragic accident. It was an overdose, and then many bad decisions were made. Heard statements about evidence not provided in trial. Not sure what that was about. I think he was talking about some of the statements that the prosecutor made in his closing statement, if I remember correctly. Said that Flint was charged with murder, that nobody was murdered. The expert testified that the manner and cause of death was undetermined, not homicide. State says Flint doesn't tell the truth. He says no addict tells the truth, especially when they're on rugs. And he said Karena could have overdosed with her own drugs because she brought some that night. Talked about Rude and that he reviewed the video, told him to tell the truth and will take death penalty. That Flint was not given immunity, and he painted Flint in a negative light. He said it was disgusting and unforgivable, and to be judged for his bad decisions. Not calling the police was wrong, but it does not make them murderers. Says that Flint's family has suffered, and the emotions should be removed from when looking and making a decision. He says you cannot convict on negative feelings or that you don't like him. Karena died of an overdose. He did not kill her. She was discovered in the morning and moved. Flint, Brad, and Alicia are reprehensible and unforgivable, but it's understandable in the panic and the lifestyle with the rugs as to what happened that day in the apartment. Said Karena had drugs, dies in apartment, doesn't want to go, they don't want to go to prison, the drug world that they lived in, and it was hard to relate. He said addiction is hard to understand. People affected, their loved ones, many of their loved ones have succumbed to this. Tot's son died. He's had friends, loved ones that have overdosed. He talked about Joni stating in her testimony that she overdosed 8 times. He said that Marlena Smith's testimony was emotional, and she admitted that Karena had been binging. She was afraid of her overdosing. Said that she was doing fentanyl, and he said small doses of fentanyl can kill you. He talked about the pressed Xanax. It wasn't a prescription. It was from the street, and they make it themselves, and you don't know what's in it. Called it Russian roulette, and said that when you play Russian roulette, you will die. He said, who was selling? Martha. Karena's grandmother was selling pressed fentanyl and killing numerous people. Says the evidence showed Karena at grandma's. Who sells? Mom says she was there for days, went to Wheeler's, and that Shannon Young dropped her off. She was yelling out the window. Shannon dropped her off, and Jeff and April were at Flint's there.
I have
Um,
I have that she dropped her off, but she didn't want to leave her there. But Karina came out and gave her the thumbs up.
right. I might have missed that part. Like you said, they were talking so fast. I
Yes.
tried to get just the
And then he's talking about the Jeff Moore testimony. He testified that they smoked marijuana. Jeff stated they were possibly drinking.
and that people were in and out doing rugs.
Yes, he said he didn't find it odd um, for a 50-year-old to be with a 50-year-old man to be with an 18-year-old because they had a family type relationship. She called him Uncle Flint.
Right.
Do you have this part?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I mean, I can
Um,
give you a break for a moment if you need one too. So, but you take more detailed notes than I do. But like you
no,
said,
go for it.
um, she called him Uncle Flint. Then Karena McClerkin leaves and comes back.
I'm
She
gonna go to the bathroom, Bossy.
sure, no problem. She seemed scared and asked Uncle Flint to stay with him. Um, I don't know what she was scared of, but she was seeking shelter at Flint Farmer's house. There was testimony of smashing the Green Hulk Xanax with a hammer and alcohol. And she also had not alcohol, I apologize. And she also had H. Ashley Wheeler testified that Flint Farmer was zanny-whopped. Flint Farmer was falling asleep at the village pantry register. Um, that that Ashley was following him around with a pillow because he was so out of it, he passes out. He goes to village pantry. Um, yes, my client lied, but he was afraid to get in trouble. Wetzel came to village pantry to buy back the Xanax, and then um, Flint Farmer uses I can't read my I put K in, but don't quote me. He says the whole case is asking you to guess and speculate. And then there was an objection. Oh, the whole case is asking you to guess and speculate. He withdrew $7,000. They want you to speculate what he did with the $7,000. Um, there's a Kroger receipt. There's no bank records. Nothing that this safe has $7,000. But Flint Farmer had to go to the ATM of that's what I had wrote earlier. He had used the ATM. Flint Farmer had to go to the ATM.
Mm-hmm.
He exits the village pantry. He fills up Wetzel's car, and the Wetzels leave. They go to Galveston. Then Farmer and Karena McClerkin go back to the Wheelers, 15 minutes or so, and then go to Farmer's apartment. The Wheelers put on a movie. April testified she heard a sound, like a pounding on a bench, or an ashtray, or coins banging. Then she hears moaning. Jeff hears thumps. April ribs him to go and says check on her. Jeff pokes Brad. He goes and he checks and he sees two silhouettes. He assumed they were smashing the Xanax. He said that's reasonable to believe. He says, go ahead, Marv.
He did say that Brad sees silhouettes. He would know if she was being attacked. That's why he assumed smashing of the Xanax.
Yes. Um,
And I have April believed and didn't do anything. They watched their movie.
I also have he was claiming that Farmer was passed out the entire time, but Karena wasn't.
Yeah.
Um,
I have Flint's phone records show 11:57 was the last communication until 8:24 that next morning. And it was because he passed out.
right, because they said that he had no phone activity during that time either.
Then I have Joni Wetzel says Karena was alive between 2 and 3 a.m. because they left and came back, and Flint had passed out, and no one answered the first time they knocked. So they went to Meyer for an hour and a half. Comes back, pounds on the door between 2 and 3 a.m., and Karena is alive, and Joni saw her, which is different from April and Jeff's statement.
Yes.
And he reiterated the whole story about how Karena answered the door and was yelling, and Flint was passed out. No one heard this.
He's talking about how the state's timeline is off.
Right. And that Karena was alive because Joni saw her. But the state wants you to guess and speculate that Flint killed Karena during that 12 to 12:30 time when the moans were heard. But she's alive at 2 a.m. The next thing I have is that he's talking about Alicia Flint going next door to get Alicia,
Yes.
and her seeing Karena on the floor sleeping.
I have, yes. I have,
Tully brings her over to the apartment slung over his shoulder.
yes, I have the state's timeline is off. He said that, that Alicia testified to never seeing that look before. But he's never woke with a dead body on his floor before.
Yep.
He said Flint Farmer told that she overdosed, and Brad Wheeler took it upon himself. He took action himself. He took charge.
Yeah, and I have that that they did not see any evidence of a struggle or injuries. There would be evidence if there had been a struggle, but there was no evidence to tie to Flint Farmer. That's why they assumed that she got into the drugs and overdosed. It was all bad decisions. It was a bad decision. They didn't call 911. And then I have never seen that look before. But at the same time, they'd never seen a dead body before either. And that there would have been evidence of an injury. But on yesterday's show, we explained how somebody who's not trained would not see the petechiae injuries like a trained professional would be, because they're tiny pinpricks that look red, and they can be found anywhere on the face, in the eyes, underneath the eyelids, and things like that. So you guys can get what these closing statements were about. It's all for the defense. It's all about it's an overdose. It's an overdose. They made bad decisions afterwards. And that the prosecution is asking you to convict on poor decisions that were made, and on emotions, not facts. And And basically they just outline more of what they think the evidence is, that it's an overdose. Is there anything else that's real pertinent? They say there's no ligaments to look at. There's no muscle, only bones. They can't say that the spacing in the bones was from any kind of trauma or damage. They had to be put back together, and the dirt and the roots could have caused the spacing. They stated Dr. Latham said there was no trauma, no observed fractures or breaks. There's no evidence that Kylie is unbelievable, and there's more evidence she overdosed since she was alive between 2 and 3 a.m. and Flint Farmer was passed out. And that's why she answered the door. Just kept reiterating that it was due to an overdose. Asked how high of a burden. If doubt, you have to find and give the benefit to Flint Farmer and do not guilty. I think that was, I skipped over some things, Bossy,
No,
but I think those were the main points.
Yes. He really hammered that, that the prosecution wants you to believe that she was murdered, but it's more reasonable to believe that she overdosed.
Yep.
He said, even if it's just circumstantial, you must find his client innocent.
Yep. The prosecutor got back up there and gave his rebuttal to the defense, his rebuttal closing. Said it's not fair to you. Look at the facts and read the instructions. Isn't it interesting? He was passed out. And that the state is speculating. Don't believe the speculation. The number of times mentioned. Oh, he says you can tell by the number of times the defense doesn't mention the client's name if it's a bad case. And he said in his closing statement, the defense attorney only mentioned Flint's name maybe 13 times and said how Alicia and Brad, how awful Alicia and Brad are, and not to focus on Flint. That's what the defense is stating. They want it to seem like Brad and Alicia are the ones that did all this, and they are the ones that are guilty of it, not Flint.
Yeah. And just to add to that a little bit, he said everything's based on facts and evidence presented. He said everything that prosecution wants you to believe that everything to do with the client is fact, but everything else in the case is speculation.
Yep, that's what it was. And he said he doesn't want you where the evidence is because the client is a murderer and killed a kid.
Yeah, I have He said how Flint Farmer wants you to believe that putting Karena McClerkin's body over his shoulder wasn't bad, but the Wheeler's involvement was. He doesn't
Right.
want you to focus on the fact that he killed a child, a young woman. Um,
And he said this child was 18 years old and that he didn't have to play or tug at the heartstrings of the jury because of this.
correct. I just have wrap up with Deckard's closing statement because he had talked about only 3% are wrongfully only 3% of people are wrongfully convicted.
And he said this case does not prove that he's not guilty, that it wasn't proven that he's not guilty.
He said Mr. Deckard wanted to say in his closing statement that 3% are wrongfully convicted, like a shield to cast a shadow of a doubt. The stats don't change evidence. The evidence that Flint Farmer killed Karena. Do you have this part, Marv?
Yeah, he said presumed innocent till you decide, not on a statistic.
He said he said stats aren't what you should base a decision on, or
Right.
dismiss the factual evidence that Flint Farmer murdered Karena. Only 0.02% have been exonerated
And
that were wrongfully convicted.
99% are guilty.
Yes.
Yep.
If he misled that during the intro, what else has he misled you on?
And he did say there's no excuse for murdering and burying a body in the woods if it was an overdose.
Yes.
He said if he misled you on that, what else would he have misled you on? And there was an objection.
Yes.
Yeah.
He says he wants to distract you from evidence that shows his client is guilty.
And the evidence and testimony that shows he was guilty.
He doesn't want you to convict based off of a fear of a wrongful conviction.
Yeah.
He said the burden of proof is not beyond all doubt. Don't get distracted by insignificant details.
Yep.
Like the time driving between Galveston.
Yep.
We're dealing with important things like guttural and primal noises. Things that reinforce witness testimony.
Right. He said focus on the dates, the time. Everyone who is addicts, look at the things that don't look at the impossible things, the things that you don't make up. He did say Flint Farmer was guilty of concealment and he was a coward for leaving that girl in the dirt while walking around for 6 years. Even though Flint Farmer did not bury Karena and did not know where she was buried, the prosecutor is stating that Flint is the one that told Brad to dispose of the body. And Brad went and buried her and didn't tell anybody what he had done or where he had put her. Evidence says overdoses are not buried and waiting to be found. That's what I have.
Okay, I have. Is Flint Farmer guilty of murder? Absolutely, beyond. But they want you to believe that Karena overdosed and speculate. Said that he told you he's investigated hundreds of overdoses and none buried the bodies. He
Right.
said 2 people died of the fentanyl overdose in 2016. So out of 85,000 people in Howard County, she killed 2.
Because,
What?
yeah, and he was referring to the defense saying Martha, Karina's grandmother, was killing all these people with fentanyl.
Correct.
And
He
he
said
said,
there is. Go ahead.
don't let that distract you or mislead you.
Yeah, he says there. You heard the jail calls where Flint Farmer tried to manipulate people. Where he mentions asked Alicia Wheeler's testimony the next morning, how he made her help conceal the body, how she called her husband, and then Farmer as a directive to help dispose of Karina's body as a directive.
Right.
How
Says no one will find her. Blames everyone else but himself. Innocent men don't bury girls and cover it up. Is that what you have?
Yes.
Um,
The next thing I have is where he's talking about Dr. Wolf's report.
yeah. But he did say that he has no remorse for his behavior and that he's the one that put her over his shoulder and told them to dispose of her.
Yes, I have. Dr. Wolf's report stated that there was a direct blow or dropped on the back of her head. Overdoses don't get buried. How many get wrapped in plastic, driven to the country, and buried in a shallow grave?
But I think there was a mistake there because Dr. Wolf never said that she was dropped on her head because there was
Possibly. Well, I
possible.
think they were talking about how that could possibly, and so I was taking quick
Yeah,
notes. So he's probably did not say that, yes, she was dropped on the back of her head. He was stating that that injury could have been caused by a direct blow or by being dropped on the back of her head,
even
which we
though the
talked about
autopsy
earlier.
didn't show any of that.
Correct. Um, uh, Farmer claimed the police were politically motivated. Farmer showed no remorse for taking Karena McClerkin to the Wheelers and concealing the body and directing Brad Wheeler, wrapping her up into her final moments.
Right. Then he really got into the nitty-gritty. He said she gets to speak through me. You've heard the evidence, the lies, um, her silence.
He
Her
says you hear.
silence.
He says you hear her silence, be her voice, and
Yes.
that's towards the end of it. So,
Yeah.
because he had asked us all to close our eyes.
Yeah. Be her voice and don't let it be stolen. Flint is guilty. Close your eyes and listen to the silence. Note the silence in the courtroom. There was a 17-year alone, silenced and buried in the dark, wrapped in trash bags, taped together, buried. There was no light, no warmth, no comfort, no mother, and she may have been calling her name. He said something about feel the cold of the grave, feel the silence, it's deliberate. Break it by finding Flint Farmer guilty of murder. Do you have anything else on that part?
No, because I actually closed my eyes and was in the moment during
Okay.
that. So,
And that's how it ended. And then we all know that the jury deliberated until about 11 o'clock that night and went home, came back. I believe somebody said 8:30, between 8:30 and 9 they started. And went till just before 11 we were notified there was a verdict, and then it would be read at noon. The courtroom was packed for that verdict. And not only with spectators, but law enforcement. There was law enforcement every foot.
Yeah, and it's partly because the front row of the gallery is literally, you can reach out and almost touch the defense lawyers.
Yeah. And I was told by one of the prosecutors after all this happened when we were outside that 2 trials ago, somebody jumped over and did try to get to the defense team. So now they do that for all the trials.
Which you would think in this day and age and how things go, that's going to become a norm.
Yep. When I was the very first one in the courtroom when they let us in, and I went straight to the back row and went all the way down, and we just kept filling in. Bossy and I saw the head juror along with a couple of other female jurors crying. And I think we all knew at that time that this was not going to be the verdict that we wanted. And then she announced that he was not guilty of the murder charge. And she very quietly said, not guilty for the voluntary manslaughter. Some people actually thought she had said guilty. And the judge said, okay, so you have found him not guilty of the murder charge and not guilty of the voluntary manslaughter.
Like when they asked on the second charge, the involuntary manslaughter, her voice trailed off when she was saying guilt. She was like, not guilt. Like she barely could even get the rest of the word out. So,
right. So the judge reiterated what both charges were found not guilty. And that is when Karina's mom just started sobbing. She vocally sobbed. The rest of us were, because we were told not to make a sound. The rest of us quietly cried and then left the courtroom. It was, I didn't want it to be that decision, but like I had told you earlier in the week, I thought it was a 50-50. I thought that the jurors could get there if they tried. And then outside, I was told that the night that the jurors left, it was 6 guilty, 6 innocent. And then when we came online, we saw one juror had said they didn't prove how she died. There was not enough evidence to prove how she died. That is what hung the jurors up. So it's so sad. But then we learned a little while later that 6 new charges for obstruction had been were pending, and that he had been charged with those then, and we were able to announce it because it was on my case. He got a $20,000 bail and had to pay 10%, which is $2,000. And the family paid that, and he was out that evening. I do know that he's got a Facebook page. It is private. But I guess I want to talk about some of the things that are being said in the comments underneath these videos, underneath posts about the trial and things like that, because there's a lot of people who have not listened closely or maybe got things confused. So I'm being asked a few things, and this is Bossy, this is where you can come in here. If more evidence is provided, can Flint Farmer be retried? The answer is no. He cannot be retried on murder and manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter, through the county of Kokomo. Okay? It's called double jeopardy. Once you're acquitted, you cannot be charged again. So, if evidence comes out that he actually did it, he's a free man. Doesn't matter. The only way they can get him any more time is to go through these 6 obstruction charges. And I was told that the total for those 6 obstruction charges is 15 years. Now, I know there's a petition out there. Numerous people have signed it for a federal case against him. In most scenarios, the feds will not pick up the case and prosecute it because we've already had a trial here and he was acquitted. It has to be, unless more evidence comes along that really proves that he did it, and I mean really proves that, like, somebody saw him do it, then they could do a federal case against him.
Okay, so that was my question, because I know that in order to be charged federally, there are certain stipulations and a guideline. There have to be certain crimes committed along that to get, because it's not considered double jeopardy because we're dual sovereign citizens. But that was my question. If there was some really substantial new evidence, he still cannot be tried with the state ever again.
He cannot.
And I don't even know with new evidence, but maybe, I don't know if you looked into this. I don't know anything about this, but maybe he could be tried federally. But my heart goes out to the family. I know this wasn't the verdict that you wanted or deserved. You didn't deserve that, but
So the other thing that I want to talk to all of you about is the fact that people have said that Flint buried Karena in the comments, underneath these videos, under articles, under posts. No, he did not bury, Flint did not bury Karena. He did not know that she had been buried. He did not know where she was buried. Brad and Alicia are the only people that went to that trailer court that day and buried Karena. And Brad himself said that he and Alicia did not tell a soul, because once you tell somebody what you did, the word gets out. And he couldn't trust anybody. So therefore, he didn't even tell Flint what happened and how he disposed of Karena. Okay? I'm going to make that perfectly clear. Flint had nothing to do with disposing of Karena and had no idea what happened. Now, there's other people that have said that the prosecutors need to be fired because they didn't present a good case. The prosecutors did do the best they could. They fought every which way for Karena. The fact is that they had one of the toughest cases in front of them. There was only bones left, and those bones were degraded. There was no toxicology. There was no soft tissue or ligaments for them to look at. Therefore, the pathologist and the coroner both agreed that the cause and manner of death were undetermined. I can see how a jury couldn't get past the not guilty verdict when the pathologist and the coroner are telling you they don't know how she died. It could have been an overdose or it could have been a murder. They can't say for sure. Bossy, how do you feel the prosecution did with what they had?
I think they did a great job. Just like you said, they fought hard. There was 3 of them. I'm sorry, maybe 4. I'm not quite sure who the lady was. Because she never really got up and spoke.
Right.
But there was a team of 3 of them at least, and the lady, and they fought. McCann's closing statements were impactful to me as a person, and I just got to say that I knew some of the basics of this case. There wasn't much out there other than what you heard on YouTube, and I'm glad that they clarified that all the crap that's been put out on YouTube is bull. It's bull.
Yeah, Gabe Ellis had nothing to do with this. That's another one. Well, I heard Gabe Ellis drugged her up. False. Absolutely false.
Well,
The fact that... Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. God, I was interrupting you. Michael Phillips said that he was the last person to see Karena alive.
Absolutely false.
Everything that Michael said was false.
Right. Now, what was I going to say?
You were talking about Gabe Ellis, how that was false. And it's a shame.
Oh, yes. The big things that I want to tell you are misconceptions and everything. Flint Farmer cannot be tried by the state level again.
He could come out with his story and say, yep, I did it. He could. I'm not saying he could.
Go in front of the courthouse and tell the whole town that he did it.
And he got away with it.
And say, stick it in your ear because you can't try me again. It sucks, but that's how it is. So he can't be tried again. He had nothing to do with burying her. Didn't even know she was buried. And in our opinions and others that have watched the prosecution, they did the best job they could. Have they always done that with Kokomo, cases in Kokomo? Absolutely not. But on this case, they did. There have been back and forth words between Jerry and Flint's sister already. That happened yesterday. I had words with Flint's sister through comments yesterday, and so did many other people.
I would like to just add to this that she's basically Michael Phillips Hunting Evil true crimes handler, in my opinion.
Well, we do know that he was staying in her backyard, so
all those times he was bragging about living in a tent and all this information about Karena, just the pieces just make sense.
But that's enough. We don't need to say any more about him. Rude said it best. He has mental issues. I gotta look at my messages here. I had sent somebody something that we wanted to make sure that we debunked. It's going around line that the prosecutor went to school with Flint. Okay? And that the prosecutor, one of the prosecutors should have never been on the case because he went to school with Flint. That is false. Okay? Because you can't take a prosecutor off the case just because they went to school together. That was how many years ago? Now, if somebody could prove that the prosecutor knew Flint when this happened and they were still chummy and got along and talked and all that, then yes. Then I would say the prosecutor should have been taken off the case. Okay? Another thing I've heard is, well, anybody that was in there for jury selection, if they said they heard about the case or read about the case, they can't be on the jury. Absolutely false. The judge asks each and every single potential juror several standard questions before the attorneys even get the chance to. And the very first question is normally, have you read or seen any information about this case? If somebody answers yes, then anybody who's answered yes, the judge says to them, can you take the information that you've heard and seen and put it out of your mind and only look at the facts that are presented to you and the evidence that is presented to you and base your decision only off of the facts and evidence? If that individual says yes, and after the questioning by the attorneys, if the attorneys don't want to strike them for anything else, they're on the jury. As long as they say they can take everything that they've heard or seen and put it out of their mind and only base their decision on the evidence and the facts that are presented at the trial, they can be on a jury. It happens. It happened in the Delphi trial. It happens probably in a lot more trials than you realize. We just don't get to see the jury selection process of these trials on TV. So that was another misconception that I wanted to clear up. Another thing is, I hear is, why didn't the prosecution ask for a change of venue? Okay. When you have a trial and you do a change of venue, you are usually taking a few counties down the road so that people are less likely to hear about the trial. When that happens, the state has to pay for the juries to be sequestered, They have to pay for all of their food, breakfast, lunch, dinner, any snacks, whatever, and they also have to pay for their lodging. If this county can't afford to hire more people to get a case that was dismissed because of lack of staff, how do you think they're going to pay to have move this to a different county and have the jurors sequestered, pay for all their meals and their lodging? Now, my advice to the city of Kokomo is this: go after your druggies, go after your speeders, go after anything that will bring in more revenue. Go after the druggies and fine them. Fine them up the ass. Fine them all you want, because that brings in revenue. That'll help get you more help at the prosecutor's office and be able to change the venue if you need to. But do your job, KPD. You know, don't just turn a blind eye to this stuff anymore. I know the drugs are bad, but you got to buckle down. And in the meantime, if you do buckle down, you're going to be bringing in revenue that helps your city. It'll help get more help for the prosecutor's office. It'll help change a venue if you need it.
And then please listen to victims' families.
Yes. I think that was everything that, yes, that was everything that I had written down. Final thoughts, Bossy?
My heart just goes out to the family. I'm so sorry. I really don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
I do want to say this because there's a lot of people out there. This is one other thing that I've heard. Because I don't get on Facebook or any of that crap. But
Yeah.
I heard that a lot of people are saying, that Karena died of an overdose, and that's just not true either. There was no cause of death could be determined, because if there were, this very well could have a different outcome as well.
I agree. So anybody who comes up to you and tells you that Flint Farmer was found innocent and that means that Karena overdosed, that is an absolute lie.
There's been a smear campaign against Karena's family and Karena for pretty much 9 years now.
Yep. The only thing this verdict means is that the prosecution could not prove how she died, because she was buried for 6 years in a shallow grave, and all the pertinent things that were needed during an autopsy were gone.
It basically boiled down to a 50-some-year-old man was more worried about saving his own skin than saving the life of a just barely 18-year-old girl, if in fact she had overdosed. Those are facts you can't overlook either.
Right. Maria, I will not be able to make it for the obstruction trial. I know there's a hearing the end of this month, next month. I can't remember. I'm hoping that Bossy or one of my other YouTuber friends can, or somebody will come take notes for me so that I can report on it.
I will see what I can do and do my best to help you out, Marv, and still be there to support the families because they need it now more than ever.
Right, right. I just have a very busy summer with both of the kids. Um, so I know that I won't be able to get here for that that hearing and possible trial whenever it is, if it's through the summer. And I am still trying to get a full-time job other than YouTube. So if that happens, I start over and get less vacation and stuff in the beginning. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we're all wishing you the best of luck in your new endeavor and continuing on your podcast and YouTube channel. We all appreciate you covering these trials that aren't publicly aired for us to see. And I think you take great notes, the best of your ability. Anyone who disagrees, feel free to go in a courtroom and try doing it yourself.
Exactly. I can tell you that the channel is going to keep going. I am going to discuss the Destiny Pittman case. I am going to discuss the Bruce case. I'm still going to do Tabitha Shuck Rains out of Tipton. I have a couple cases to look at, or one case to look at, two cases to look at out of Pennsylvania. I still have to follow up on one case out of Wisconsin, and I need to do updates on all the cases that I presented in my 3 years on YouTube and any future cases. But there will be a lot more missing person cases on this channel because it's important to get that information out. So keep your eyes open. If you have a case that you want me to look at, send it to me. I will certainly look at it and cover it. Any missing person case, unsolved murder. I know some other people had mentioned trials. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that, but I'll definitely report from home on any case you want me to.
Marv, do you think in the description you could put that petition, the federal petition for anyone who might be interested in signing it for Karina's case? If so, I'll appreciate it.
I know Jerry's got it.
Okay. I mean, like I said,
Oh,
you could
no.
always put it in the description as well, and that way it just stays up with the live stream.
Yes, I will put here we go. I'm trying to find the link for it so that I have the link to put in the description of.
Sure, no problem. You had a few latecomers come in. I'll say hi to. I see Kathy. And hello again to Maria, in case we missed you earlier, and Kiwi Bridget. Miracle Heart says, thank you both. You have both been nothing short of amazing while reporting on this case, and we appreciate that so much.
Absolutely. And
I know Marv really appreciates the support with the chat and the replay crew. She knows that we all have different schedules and different times and things going on in our life. It's always good to get out, get some fresh air, spending time with your family, all of that good stuff. So thank you for supporting her. Marv's one of the true crimers that I really enjoy watching and spending time with and calling my friend. She's a sweet, awesome lady. So thank you for everything.
Thank you for all of your help with this. I appreciate it. Tomorrow I am heading home. I'm going to stop in Illinois to see a friend and spend the night with her, and then I'll be back home Monday. So there will be no lives or podcasts for a couple days as I make my way home. But after that, I will be back and be bringing you more stories. You're welcome. You're welcome so much. And just letting you know, I have been getting a lot of comments on the videos, on any of my Facebook posts. I'm still trying to get to all those comments. So if I haven't responded to you and you've asked a question, just hold on. I'll continue working on that the next couple of days. So, Kathy, I'm glad that was the last thing I was going to say, is that the Kokomo community has embraced both Bossy and I for covering this, and we appreciate each and every one of you, and the friendships that we have made with the people we have met are forever. So
absolutely, and I'm sure the families appreciate the communities coming out and supporting them in their time of need as well. Like I said, I'm not speaking for them, but if I were in their position, like I said, it'd be nice. It's nice to have community support.
yes. So if we can end this live stream the way that we always do, get those purple hearts for Karena going. When I get home, I will be sharing the videos that I took here. It's just easier to do on my big computer with my 3 monitors. So I will share those as soon as I get home and can put them all together. Oh, yep, there goes those purple hearts. Remember Karena, never let her memory die. Let it always shine with the smile, that bright smile that she had.
Yep, you can keep her memory alive by sharing who she was with family and friends.
Yep. And just give the family as much support as you can.
Thank you, Marv.
You're welcome. All right, everyone, you have a great night, and I'll see you soon.